Hi, Thursday evening. Let us dig into quite a number of things. For the F84, those side white pieces of plastic, I looked online for instrument panel. I just put this picture here so that you can actually see that. That is the small version. I just made 3 like that, and this is a picture I found of the side consoles, which I've then scaled down to 3 close sizes. I didn't even measure, just guesstimate, and it doesn't even matter if it's perfect. You can judge that the resolution and the actual visual impression of those things reduces quite a lot as you drop. So here you can see quite a lot, and that's just a scaled down version, but it's just to have something in the cockpit. So I will just glue those pieces onto the side, and I'll make it look slightly more than nothing. That's the purpose of that. It's not as good as decals, and it's not as good as photographic resolution, but it's something. The 2 pieces, this piece which I knocked out there, and this piece which I knocked out there, now they were rather damaged with super glue. The person had built those pieces with super glue, which is a very bad idea to build major components with super glue. Super glue is sort of good for very small joints and things like that, but definitely not main things. Anyway, it benefited me because all I needed to do was go to the other side and take my this is not it, but take my knife, which is a little bit heavier, and just sharply tap it till the super glue joint breaks, and it came out quite easily. And then I could very carefully actually clean up that surface, and it's slightly sanded in between, so I've lost no detail. The super glue mess comes off the plastic surface without damaging the plastic, for the most part, completely unlike styrene glue, which actually affects the plastic fundamentally. So I'm able to then, even though I lost a slight bit of the edge because it's very sharp there, and I had to clean up. Oh, there's a little bit of edge that I saw messed around the edges there. I just need to clean up on the outside there. But, managing to bring it back to a point which is a lot better than it was, and then can do a tiny little bit of filling on the edge there. So that will make quite an interesting ship, and I will show you now. It doesn't have a lot of parts. So actually, for the size of the box, it's got 2 Black Hawks. For the size of the box, it's a substantially easier build than you might have imagined. It's amazingly gone and got hooked. Sort that out. Black Hawk half. And then they have given quite a lot of photo etch. They've got the railings, so I will use railings. I will use those and probably most of these larger ones. I'm not sure if I will use any of that. We'll see. But we'll talk about it gradually as I progress. So this is one of those models that, you know, you just do a little bit. It's no rush, and it's not a target to actually roll it out. And I realize, you know, that while it's nice to treat a model as start it and finish it, not all builds actually sort of have that feel about them. They're quite okay to just do smaller bits at a time. In fact, more than half of this build is probably just getting a very good surface paint, little bit of weathering, just the right color variations and all that sort of thing. So there's a little bit of building to get all the bigger bits on. It's another 10 pieces or so. I'm not sure which smaller pieces would get on, and then, you know, glue these halves together, obviously, and then a lot of painting phases, which we'll deal with. Anyway, something different. It is nice when you can slightly restore something that was not looking too good. Don't know how this is managed. Okay, there we go. That one is 350th scale. This one is, this is the Russian battleship Potemkin or Pochumkin. I can't remember the year, earlier than 1910, something like that. Now the stage that this is at was grey base coated and then using a low quality white acrylic to brush down the sides. So this is not stable paint. If water gets onto that, it'll run off. So this needs a floor wax covering once I've done a little bit more. And then that brown to start giving the feel of the scale and the rusting and so on. But it's by no means a final product. That is definitely not good enough for a final product. It's basically the very rough texture start of a work, onto which now I need to go and decide how much I'm varying from the real pictures. I don't necessarily want it to represent exactly as the images online. I want it to have probably a bit more character, in fact. But it is quite a nice ship. It's very short and stout. There's still a fair bit that goes on to it. A lot of detail, but none of it can go on till we've sort of really got all the side work done and then deck work. Now that manufacturer was, I can't remember, it's a Russian one. Not bad. So that's sort of back in progress, at least back on the bench, I should say. This one is one of those that I was talking about restoring, and I've got the pieces, got the props, got the windscreen, got the missing float, and it is mostly ready to paint actually. I'll just give it a little bit of a wipe down, proper wipe down, give it, mask the windows, get the, there's possibly, no, I don't know, there's not a whole lot I can do by sticking a brush through the windscreen hole and touching up on the inside. I don't think there's much point in that. Getting that float on. That float is, oh, I suppose that's acceptably angled, maybe a slight bit off. Get this one on, probably just gluing, and live with it, and nothing much else, no filling or anything, just, oh, maybe there's a little bit on the nose there to fill. And then we'll start seeing, I don't know if I've got decals, otherwise, do you think we should do that civilian? Meaning white with a couple of stripes and a civilian number. Something like that. I don't want it camouflaged, and I think it's nice enough to actually do civilian. It'll certainly brighten it up a whole lot being white. But you just need to be careful. I can't spray it white directly because of those heavy remaining black bits in there and there. So it needs a sort of a very light grey base coat. Now one could also put on rivet wheel detail. Give me your thoughts. Rivet wheel detail, or as in just rivet lines, or it hardly matters, you know, once it's painted and it's got its decals on. This is the other little tiger moth which I've just glued. Now that had pretty damaged undercarriage, and the two very short struts are not even touching anything. So this is a very, you know, touch and go sort of fix. It's a bit of a delicate, but it's, you know, it's not too bad. It's able to be fixed. Okay, I see that one isn't even touching anything either. That. And we'll just leave that like that. So this is just a little bit of a restoration. I've got the remaining bits. And this one is one that I obtained just like that. Those pilots are so awkwardly present in the little tiger moth, but yet that's, you know, that's what was supplied. So I think it sort of makes about 4 or 5 tiger moths, 2 of which are not mine originally, not my builds. I'll clean this one up. That can also stand in line. And then I want to let that be one of the next builds that I do. When I say next, you know, sort of within the next 10 or so builds, quick builds, because I said I need to do a tiger moth where I've spray painted it. I've still yet not done a spray painted tiger moth. We'll keep it in yellow for this. Oh, I mean, yes, because for the yellow plastic ones, I'll probably just keep them yellow. For the newer Airfix ones, of which I've got 2, we can do different color schemes. And then, I don't think there was anything else I wanted to say before we look at this. So I have de-sprued and had a bit of a look, and I am rather liking this. So I've left these parts on, at least all of these small parts. Now a lot of the parts, oh, I see there's even 2 prop types, 3-blader and a 4-blader. A lot of the parts you don't use. So from everything that I showed you, so no undercarriage, and various, no bombs, not a very difficult build actually. For the size of the box, to what eventually remains, I'll actually go through and remove all the bits that really aren't going to be present, and I'll show you what remains. You know, big enough, bulkier than Catalina. Interesting sort of triangular shape. I am rather liking this. Good surface detail. There is a light satin texture to the plastic. It's not full gloss plastic. There is fair sinkage, as I may have mentioned, over there and there due to those rather large bits. There's sinkage there and there. Due to that bit of thickness. I'm not going to fill that. You would lose those 3 panels. And for this type of build, there's so many sink marks. So all of that has caused a pattern of sink marks all over there. So spending your time filling some sink marks, you know, you've even got it on this engine. And you see the sink marks there. So there's a whole lot of sink marks there, and you might as well just leave it. Wings. Very nice surface there. That's sort of perfect. Except for the thick edge, but the amount and nature of that sinkage that you get over there is barely noticeable. Bottom surface, not bad at all. I'm not seeing anything bad there. So that'll all be closed up. This has the rib texture. Which is just a bit difficult to bring through there. There you can just see it on that top reflection. And then obviously a reasonably nice sized cockpit interior. So I'm going to go through and remove all the parts that simply don't get built, and it's probably 20 to 30 parts, maybe even more. So a lot of what you see here doesn't go on. Decals, just a quick view again. You know, pretty simple. I looked at the color schemes. The very dark blue, the black blue one is sort of okay, but I don't really want it in that. The gray is nice and will allow for a more interesting weathering effect. So it's probably going to be that grey one. This is it's really not good box art, this black blue. There's the grey and white. That's, I think, the better one to do it in. Now you see the interesting tail arrangement. So I will be looking at a lot of online pictures. 1945. I don't know how many of those were built, but very nice looking. So my opinion of this, very, very nice clear parts. My opinion of it is that product-wise, it's very, very nice. Molding-wise, they've allowed themselves to fall into the trap of having a lot of sink marks. I think many manufacturers are just not, you know, they sort of go up to the, it's a great design, mold it, and whatever happens due to molding, well, tough luck, that's just what happens. As opposed to Eduard, which is actively planning the pieces so that you don't have the sink marks. Now, one thing I did want to say, oh sorry, my rating for this, to be honest, is, you know, possibly even up to an 8 out of 10. I think it'll be a very, very impressive model when done. With really the only problem that I am seeing is the sink marks. The one thing that I did want to say for the Spitfire people, let me just put this away. So this was after my discussion and looking at the Eduard pieces, and I'm not sure where I put that now. But if you're you know, seriously into your Spitfires, then you'll know what I was talking about. Or you can just go back and review that Spitfire, the Eduard Spitfire coverage that I was looking at. The fillet, the wing fillet, which is quite a long bit of curve running from wing to fuselage, Eduard had molded a sort of a little edge piece so that they've got the nice sharp trailing edge curve, but it went slightly onto the leading edge. And then I was saying, okay, well, now you've got a little bit of a thing to fill there. So I've put up pictures of the Spitfire fillet that I took at the museum, and I hadn't even thought of looking at directly at the time, but afterwards, as I was looking at the various bits of the fillet, I realized that actually the Spitfire has that line at near the end of the fillet there. So Eduard hasn't done a weird thing there. They've actually reproduced exactly what's on the Spitfire, and you shouldn't be filling it. If you can do a very, very nice glue of that, that is exactly what it looks like. And those photos are on the Facebook page, and you can go and look at that. It's probably a thin piece right near the edge of the trailing edge of that rearmost long curved fillet part. So that sort of makes me, you know, really even more impressed with what Eduard has done there. Now, while I'm not an absolute Spitfire nut, if I can certainly see that if you absolutely into an aircraft like I am into the Harvard, and they've done it that accurately. You know, it is really, really a big draw card to do the model. Whereas I'm sort of okay with doing even a Tamiya Spitfire, which, as we've seen, has got fillet inaccuracies compared to the Edward. The Edward is vastly more accurate than the Spitfire, although, as it was pointed out to me, I was not comparing eras correctly. The 148th Spitfires are decades older, and that to correctly compare quality of production, you should be looking at that 132nd Tamiya Spitfire. I'm not that into the Spitfire to go and get that one, but very nice to know that the Edward is that good quality. Now I'm starting to get the things together on my desk. One of the things I realized as I was packing everything away and cleaning up the room a lot, you really do need your things to be in eyesight. You know, the decals for the model, the parts, like the parts for that Grumman Widgeon, which I've just found, decals which I may have for it, but sort of for your next 10 upcoming builds, and that's especially me when I'm talking about builds that are not all just in one box. You've got a sort of a main assembly, then I've got a box of other bits, then there's the instructions, then there may or may not be decals as relevant. I can't even remember if they are there. So this is a trap I let myself fall into, is the separation of kit items. And I need, you know, try and get that all back together. What will be my next step on this particular one is probably getting my head around the exact finish that I want. So I need pictures. I need a number of pictures. It doesn't even have to be the same ship. It's to do with the nature of weathering. So then I need sort of a second level. I need to tone the browns down a little bit, and also you'll notice that the fact that I used the same brown all over on all of this weathering is a little bit too much to stomach. You know, how would all of the rust be exactly the same? Rust has a lot of variations on it, so there I need brown variations. I also need variations in that white. And while I don't have, well, I do actually have the briefest of main lines on the side of this ship, which are probably not going to come through on the... There are some main panel lines, and those I've done nothing with, and they probably are worth somehow bringing into the picture. So to go further on this, I need to study weathering and general impression of ship sides and choose the route. And then when I can start giving a general impression of deck as well, just getting an initial feel for the coloration there, even though I may be damaging it slightly, although not much at this stage. The amount of weathering touch-ups and next layers that I'll be doing at this point is not likely to be damaging other areas too much. And what I mean by that is you see all that white fluffing around everywhere from the brush. So you don't want to be undoing good deck work. And when I say good, weathered deck work, when you're still doing white weathering. This one is going into a, so if you were wondering why that stops there, by the way, this is going into a C setting, so it will be at waterline. There's nothing happening underneath that ship. It'll be going up to waterline, and I'll be doing a C a sea surface representation. So it's a cutout of styrofoam, and it's a block of styrofoam a little bit bigger than the ship and about 3 times the width of that ship, which we'll start looking at. So I haven't done a sea diorama on this channel yet, sea representation. I don't really want to call it a diorama, it's more setting. And then bringing out as much little detail as possible, not just leaving it hidden. Everything that you can do to enhance the features lends towards the final effect. But so far looking pretty good. Okay, that's it for today. Off to inside, and I will still talk about that one. And I'll go and put the other bits onto there, and I think I have enough tiger moth decals, because almost everyone has bought a tiger moth at some stage, and you get leftover decals all over the show. Okay, happy modeling. Cheers.